And there we are. We're on the air again.
I love how it always says on the air, like we're a big TV station. So, oh, geez, I was what a weird day. I got up early. I was you know I've been working ever since, and I sit beside an Amazon device, and I've been listening to Rush. I'm feeling nostalgic. I'm in Italy still. I'm
Yep.
feeling nostalgic. I feel I want to be Canadian again. So I'm listening to Rush, and then I keep asking it what time it is, and it keeps telling me that it is 8 o'clock, or it was it's we're 6 hours behind, and I'm like, oh, okay, great, good. And then you come on and you say, no, we're 5 hours behind. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This thing says that I'm 6 hours. But I don't know why it doesn't. My computer knows. My computer gave me a warning. It said, we're going to be on in half an hour. And I'm like, yeah, it's wrong. Turns out it's right. This thing is wrong.
Well, in the past, they probably used time zone lookup tables for that query and
Yeah.
calculated a correct answer and handed it out to you. And now they pass it to an AI algorithm that gives you a statistically probable answer independent of whether it's right or not. Yeah.
So the interesting part is that we used to switch clocks at the same time. I know that,
Yep.
and then some point in time, Ontario wanted more daylight, so we switch over about almost a month earlier than Italy does. So for
Right.
a month, the actual time difference is 5 hours, not 6 hours. As you can see, I've been in Italy for a long time now, because I'm now talking with my hands.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what's my excuse?
but I'm doing it more and more.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's just happening. I am turning that red.
I've always
Funny
been a
thing.
hand talker, so what can I tell you? There's something about that I was going to say, and now I'm just mumbling.
You got a little Italian in you anyway. Yesterday I saw a book, and then speaking of, we're obviously talking about books and
Yep.
writing and stuff. But I saw a book that was called something like "How to Be Italian" or understanding the Italian language,
Hmm.
and it is a slight. It's a picture on one side and a description on the other, and it is all the different hand gestures they use, and that there is an actual language attached to all these gestures. So we laugh that Italians are always moving their hands, but this book actually explains what they all mean. They are not just random gestures; they are actually meaning of something. This means whatever. So
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's not somebody's obviously picked up on that, and it's an Italian who wrote it. So it's not like it's one of those misappropriation of culture or somebody just being funny. It's actually an Italian. I think it's a professor or something who actually wrote it. So
Right.
yeah,
But,
so
well,
it's a legitimate book.
you
So
know, I did spend uh, my adolescence growing up in Toronto in a very Italian section. So maybe that's where it came from.
yeah, that's probably exactly where it came from. So
Unfortunately,
yeah,
the only hand signals that I really know are rude. So,
yeah. Yeah, it seems to be I haven't picked up much on the language. I've tried, but and I was talking to an Italian who we are trying to talk English as well, and he's kind of learned a little bit, but not as much. And the interesting part of that is that he turns to me and he says, this learning a new language is difficult at 50. And I'm like, yeah.
yeah, no kidding.
So, yeah, but all the dirty stuff you come up with, you can grab that like that. So those those come to you first thing in the morning. So
Yeah.
anyway, all right. So I guess
Let's
it's
get to it.
time to talk turkey.
It's time.
You wanna kick things off this week? How about you do that?
Okay, well, I have finished going through the second round of editing my incomplete manuscript. I did that about most of a week ago, probably last Wednesday or something like that. And now I'm fighting my ADD autistic neurology and trying to get back into it, and suffering feel of failure and all this stuff. So it has not been a pleasant few days, but I'm making a little progress and distracting myself like a good ADD person. So I've revised my manuscript analysis program last night.
So I want to go back to that. So what is stopping you from getting back into it? It's just
It's a fairly classic ADD sort of thing. It's hard to articulate, but you get sort of frozen, right?
Yeah.
You really want to do something, but because you haven't been doing it, you're resistant to starting doing it. It's really nasty. There are guys who do videos that explain this so much better, but it's just a sort of mental barrier. It's like the one thing that I really need to or really want to do is the one thing that I'm doing other things instead. And in fairness, my business has been busy as hell the past couple of days too, so that's given me the opportunity to not move forward on the manuscript. So it's been
so I know where you're coming from. I have ADHD, so a little bit.
Right.
I cannot stick. It's one of the reasons I can't work in an office.
Right.
I could not sit behind a computer all day and just work on one thing. In fact, I told you I got up this morning basically at whatever time it was, Toronto time or whatever. But I've been up for 8 hours already.
right.
And I have done 7 different things.
Right.
I cannot stick on the same thing for 7 hours. I did myself. I did some editing. I assembled a vacuum cleaner. I've made 2 pots of tea. Just everything is just, I've gone through a closet. Not all of it, sitting in front of a computer doing things. It's always
Right.
something that I've got to, I bounce from one thing to another, and whether half of them get completed, I'll come back to this later, right?
Yep.
So,
It's
yeah,
it's really easy to start something and really hard to finish.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
always say that, I have a to-do list,
Mm.
and even and as I look at my to-do list, I and I'm like, I didn't finish that, but I did do that, and then I write it on the to-do list, you
Hmm.
know, as in, okay, well, at least I can see a check mark on it
Right. Right.
that I've done something, even though it was not originally on the list. Wash dishes, and you're like, oh, well, I didn't have it on the list. I might as well put it on there because I did complete that one.
Yeah.
So,
My attempts at to-do lists have been far too depressing to continue.
oh, I continue to do them. I need pads around me all the time and things like that, so I can continue to make. I've got Google Tasks now that I've started as another to-do list. I used to have Todoist. Then
Yeah.
that didn't pop up enough and tell me what I needed to do, so I didn't do that. And then tasks, and I really need something that just pops up every day and says, "Here's what you got."
My
Right,
to-do
and then
list
I can
is my
figure it out.
inbox. So I've got a zillion email accounts, and Thunderbird lets you build a search folder. So I've got a search folder that's got all the unread messages from all of the mailboxes and anything that I've tagged. And I'll tag it with, amongst other things, important and to do, right? So urgent, not urgent on the to-do list. A lot of that stuff just goes off the end and never gets done. But it's still mostly the important stuff gets put in there, and I can look at it and go, oh yeah, I really do need to do that, and then I'll handle it and go from there. So that's why you've heard this when we were working on websites. It's like, send me an email, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the text is one thing, but if it's not in that list, then it runs a serious risk of not existing.
Got it. Got it. So all I can do is wish you luck to get back on track, because I know exactly what you're going through. I really do. And as I gave up the editing myself. I gave up editing for the weekend, and then this morning, I was like, I like to doing it first thing in the morning, but I ended up doing 3 or 4 things before I went, you know what, you've got to do this editing, because you've got
Right.
51 chapters to get through, and the theory was 1 chapter a day, but that's still 2 months worth of editing, and I really didn't want to start. My editing continues. I've tightened my story. I'm on chapter 5. I've lost close to 1,000 words on it, so I think I'm,
Good.
bringing stuff in. We talked about that pro writing aid,
Yes.
thing that I was that I did. I submitted that work, so I'm kind of happy about that.
Good.
My website building is kind of moving along. I've got a meeting with the guy this week who's doing that. Yeah, and then as I said, it's not called write-a-palooza, by the way.
Okay, I was
Talk
going
to
to ask
MFA.
you that. That was my next question.
It's called it's a write-a-thon.
Ah, okay.
Not much more help, to tell you the truth, because there's it still has no defined thing,
Right.
and they basically just said, I think they may have listened to our podcast last week, because he did post something, and it says, write-a-thon coming in April. We will keep you updated.
Right.
I'm like, oh, well, maybe they are. Maybe Pocket MFA is listening to us and goes, oh yeah, I guess we haven't done anything with that lately. So I still have that in theory coming up in April, and that means I've got to get. That means I'm going to do 2 things that I always think don't work together: a writing and an editing. I always try to keep them very separate, but I'm going to try and do it. I'm going to try.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to push myself into that.
So 2 things. One,
Let's see.
do you have any idea how long the write-a-thon is?
It's all month. So it's the
Okay.
entire month of April.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that I do know.
Okay.
At least he said it's going to be for the month of April.
So that's sounding more like a NaNoWriMo kind of thing. Yeah.
Correct. That's what I'm getting the feeling of.
Cool.
But as I said, I've got a short story that I had in mind. That Alexa, stop. I don't know what the heck she's doing.
We said bad things about her. They're sending the SWAT team.
Yeah, they're coming through the windows now. Yeah, I think it's a NaNoWriMo of some sort, but in the spring.
Okay.
That's what I'm going with. But I have a story that I'm kind of holding on to. I basically I've already put like 3 chapters down. But I thought, you know what, I'll just stop it there. I have a pretty good idea where I want to go with it. Maybe just a short story, maybe a full story.
Cool.
But I could probably hash it out during this, and if it's one of those things where you're. Do you ever do these write together things?
I've tried 1 or 2 and been magically unsuccessful.
I've never done them.
It has to do with focus again, right? Like,
Yeah.
if it's sort of like, okay, everybody write for 15 minutes and then we'll come back and chat about how wonderful we are. And it's like, it takes me 17 minutes to get fully into writing mode.
Yeah.
So, no, not working.
Yeah, I think Pro Writing Aid had them, and I know that this Pocket MFA that I'm part of, they have them, and I just, because when I write, nobody else does. Everybody always does them at night.
Oh,
And
really?
I'm like, yeah, well, which would work for you because
Yes.
you're more of a nighttime writer.
Yeah.
But at 6 in the morning, it's not like they have write together.
Yeah. I think I mean, a lot of people have day jobs, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's the time when you get up and get ready and go to work and make money, and then you're writing in the evening. So
Yeah, I just don't see how it. Well, I've heard of people who write in the evening or write at their job or they write they write. If you want to write, you're going to write.
yes, yeah,
Um, but to me, it's even when I do my day job, or I get up even earlier because I like it to be dark
ah,
outside when I start writing.
okay,
Um, I heard David Duchovny when he wrote his book. He wrote it during COVID. In an interview, he said, "I like to get up at like at 4 or 5 in the morning when I'm still half asleep, and that's when thoughts and
uh,
ideas come to you when you're just not fully awake yet,
hmm,
and that's where the creativity comes from, right? So."
interesting.
I guess I understood completely where he was coming from when he said that. I was like, oh yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Huh. I morning. It's like, okay, which way is the bathroom? Like, you know.
How do I angle it and hope I don't hit the floor? So, uh, yeah, I guess.
So,
So, what are the goals this week?
well, wait a second. I want to cycle back to the ADD thing a bit.
Okay,
Do
good,
you
good.
have hyper focus?
Do I have hyper focus?
Yeah. Do you ever sit down on a task and just dive into it for 3 hours without any of the H in the ADD?
Um, yes, there are a few tasks that I have that I do, and I also am an avid collector of things.
Okay.
Not necessarily things that I should be collecting,
Mm-hmm.
but things that I collect. And if I get onto um, like I just recently got back into vinyl,
Oh yeah.
so I started buying vinyl, and I was like, okay, now when I go to these record shows, or when I go to um, the get on the internet, or Discog, or any of these vinyl places, I need to have a list so I don't buy the same thing twice,
Uh-huh.
right? Because so I put a list together of all the vinyl I had, and I just kept going. As a wine collector, same thing. I can spend hours looking through wine and or doing somebody's wine cellar, because it interests me enough, and there is it's not repetitive, but it is repetitive to a point, but it's still different.
Right. Right.
Okay, so those are the kind of things that I can get hyper focused. Writing is the other thing that I theoretically can be hyper focused for, but not for 3 hours. I cannot
Right.
sit for 3 hours, but I have an idea of chapters in my head. Probably the longest spell of writing I've ever done is maybe 2 hours, and
Yeah.
that's it. Like, after a while, my brain just starts going, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to leave it, and I always like to leave a little bit in the tank. That's something also I never like to finish everything fully. I like to write down a little bit. Here's where I'm going.
Right.
If it's like, yeah, and so so that when I come back to it the next day, I have a blueprint of where I can at least start.
Right.
So, and I can work on it in my head through the day.
And that'll be the seed for the creativity that you have when your brain is
Correct.
in
For the for,
startup mode.
for the next day. For the next
R-
day, I sit down. I kind of read what I wrote the day before. I don't edit it. I just read the day before's stuff, realize where I am, and then, oh yeah, here I am. This is what I want to do, and on my merry way, I can continue, because I left. I left him standing on a cliff somewhere, knowing that he was either going to jump or not jump, and I'd already figured out. So that's where I guess my planning comes in,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So I kind of know what he's going to do the next day, but I don't know how he's going to do it, or where, or but my I have a pre-plan that was written for me the previous day.
Nice. I hope I can develop more hyper focus in writing. I'm not there yet. I can hyper focus in software development, right? Like,
Yeah, Steve, that's something you're very interested in. You've got like I've got to be totally and very interested in what I'm doing.
it's also existing neural pathways, right?
Yeah.
Like I've been doing it for so long, and I'm so comfortable with the whole process that you just get into the zone. So, you know,
Is it something you think about, or is it something that is like just automatic to you?
oh, you have to think about it, right? So,
Okay.
case in point, last night at about 11 o'clock, I'm looking at my manuscript and I'm not happy with how I'm tracking some stuff. And it's like, okay, really, I need to be able to say, in this scene, this is what's happening with this person. And then I can extract that out and sort of build a timeline for the character, right? I've got a character sheet that lists what scenes they're in, but not how it impacts the character, right?
I meant more because we were back on the ADD.
Yep.
I meant more on the computer side.
No, this is
Is
prefixing.
it yeah,
Okay.
it's because you're so it's so ingrained in you that it's lots of thinking, or is it like it's automatic? You know, I know how to do this program. I'm going to do it and continue
No,
along.
everything requires a bunch of abstract thought, like turning the idea, which is, let's go back to what I was saying. I said, oh, hey, I need to add some markup that I can, track these characters. And then I'll go back to my program that creates the big sheet and drop that in, right? So then it's like, okay, well, what's the best way to implement this? And the way I wanted to implement it didn't work in Novel Writer. Its parsing for what I wanted to do is not compatible. So I changed the way I want to do that. And then I went back to my program, and it was fairly easy to add it in, and I got it working. And I've also added this analysis sheet that tracks how often I use every word and how often I use every phrase of 2 or 3 words. And it's helpful, but when I was reading the manuscript, I noticed that the repetitions were sort of clustered much closer together, right? I'd use this phrase, and then 2 sentences later I'd use the phrase again, and that's the problem. I could use that phrase here, and then 4 chapters down, nobody would care. But
Yeah.
when they're 2 sentences apart, or a sentence apart, then it looks repetitive. So I went,
Yeah.
okay, what I need to do is find a way to measure that if they're clustered together versus distributed across a scene or a manuscript. And I thought, well, what's that attribute? It's clumpiness. So then I go and do a web search on clumpiness, and I find papers that talk about how to measure this, that, and the other thing. And they're in different problem domains, but it gives me some ideas. So I come up with a system for generating clumpiness, and then I go back in and I change the program to gather the data that I need, and then to do the analysis, and to pump out this metric for clumpiness. And it looks pretty good. So then I format it and stick it into the spreadsheets and do all this kind of stuff, and then it's good. It looks like it'll be useful. And it's also 3 in the morning.
Yeah, I can see that. I have done things that not theoretically hyper focused as you called it, but like building furniture. I've done that till all hours of the morning.
Yeah.
You want to clean the house or something, and you finally get that
Right.
burst of energy, and it usually is sometime at the time I'm supposed to go to bed, and suddenly I can't sleep because that piece of furniture, that or something is in the living room in a box, and I'm like, no, that's got to be built now. So,
Yeah.
and then it's 3 in the morning, and yeah, everybody's mad at you because you're hammering on walls and things like that. So yeah, that's always good. So.
Yeah. All
So
right.
back to
Right.
goals. I kind of see where your goals are headed this week, but let's see if you can isolate them and say what they are.
So I'm going to do a. I'm torn. Okay. Um, I know I've got a character who does something, but I haven't set up his existence or who's asking him to do this. And it's a fairly critical piece of information. Like this data has to go back and advance plots. Um, so I'm torn between going down in and figuring out exactly where I need to add that. I've started to write that scene, and it's less inspiring than I would like it to be. And alternatively, just going to the ending scenes that are either sketched out badly or unwritten, and just writing a fucking ending. And then going back and adding in the analysis layers and figuring out what the best way to solve that problem is. I have to move a scene around. So I'm torn between, doing the analytical thing and really is a sort of a developmental edit pass prematurely, which is why I'm trying to resist doing it. And I'm really inclined to do that kind of stuff. And just getting the damn thing to the point where there's an ending, right? And then piecing it all together again. I know that's the wiser choice, but
It is the wiser choice. So if I
yeah,
could give you the advice is finish the damn thing.
right,
Uh, and then it's easier to add and fill holes, in my opinion, and in my learned practice. I have found it's easier to fix things in edit than try to work them out beforehand. Get your
right,
story, get it all in there, and then like this one that I'm editing, I've added characters, I've added whole scenes,
mm-hmm.
I've gone to bed and gone, shit, wouldn't that be a great idea to do this? And added it in. I shoved it in and realized, okay, well, that's all well and good, but in theory, if it appears here, it's got to appear later on. You better figure out where that's going to go as well. So that's where you end up doing like an entire edit again,
Yep,
because if you've added it here, you've got to satisfy the reader down here as well, so that
yeah,
this character doesn't just vanish into thin air, and they did something important. So I would finish it and then build things around that finish. If you're happy with your ending, or even if you're not happy with the ending, at least you can play with the ending and those characters.
yep,
That's how I would do it. As a pantser, the planning doesn't come in till later, when
right.
you're looking at the entire thing, and then you go, okay, that's where I can shove that in,
Well,
um,
the irony
and try to
is,
make it work.
I think I know roughly what needs to be written. Like, it's not like I'm just pantsing the thing. I've got, I know where all the elements are. I mean, I've read this thing through twice. I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. I have a pretty good idea of what needs to be written, and it's that strange ADD resistance that's
You
holding me
know
back.
what? Here's what I would tell you. That's what margins are for.
Okay.
Margins are for adding in that little extra thing. You go, okay, this character goes here, right?
Oh yeah,
Now I'm going to continue on through, blah, 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 get to the end, and then go, okay, here's where I said this character's got to go. I'm pretty sure I've got an idea how it's now going to fit.
and for me,
That's, that
that's
would be
comments in
the,
the manuscript. I just go
yeah,
back to the scene and say,
margins.
I did that for some reason, a scene I wasn't even thinking about, I went, oh, wait a second. I'm dealing with this one character's emotional state and not the others. And it's like, no, that's actually important for her character. So
I find it funny that you've only read through this thing. Well, that you read through this thing twice, and you're doing it. I've read through my thing. I don't know. Now that it's been done for a while. It's been done for a few years, but I just keep going over and over. And now when it bloated itself to 99,000 words, and I did have an agent basically say, in your genre, 99,000 is too long.
right,
You gotta trim that down. And it was and that's what probably got me thinking that maybe she's right, because
yeah,
it's been rejected, oh geez, 100 times now, but probably also because of the word count.
right,
That's
yeah,
and if that's the case, then yeah, if I can throw down, if I can, 5 chapters, almost 1,000 words. If I can trim out another, I don't know, few thousand words, I think I could, it could be within its genre limit, I guess.
right,
And I didn't
yeah.
realize that the genres have a limit, I guess.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
So
you can break them if you're somebody who's got a big name, right?
yeah,
But the way
but,
most people are handling, you know, having more to say than fits in the genre constraint is to write a series, right? Uh,
it's probably why The Stand didn't get published right away, right? Like The
Yeah,
Stand by Stephen King is like this thick. By the
exactly.
time he had written it long before, if I'm not mistaken, but it gets published because he's Stephen King, not because
Right.
it was this
Yeah,
big. And
exactly. Yeah, and
so
I mean, Brandon Sanderson could write a 400,000 word book and it would sell.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's on.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
So
it's about who you are at that point and what you
exactly.
want to put down. So my goals are edits at the end of April, repitch or self-publish, obviously repitch to agents,
Hmm.
and then that new story in April. So that's my goals are a little more simple than yours are. I
Well,
think,
mine is fairly simple. It's write the fucking ending.
and I think that's where you should go. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a little asterisk beside the write the fucking ending, and let's see where you go in 2 weeks. Based on everything that we've talked about, especially with ADHD and ADD, I find that a lot of writers do have
Oh
that,
yeah. Yeah.
and it's surprising. So people who are listening out there, if you have some feedback on, either you have it or you've got trouble with it, leave us a little feedback in the comments, and based on this week's hook as well. Um, I um I kind of I worded the question wrong last week. I said, "What do you have spares of?" Because I could not think of what I really wanted to say, which was, as a writer, what can you not live without? And that's what I meant to ask you. And then suddenly it came out as spares, and I'm like, the reason you have spares is because you
You
keep
can't live
needing
without them.
something, and you can't live without these things.
Right.
So the question was, as a writer, what do you have you cannot live without?
Right.
If you didn't have it, you probably couldn't do what you really wanted.
That is a long list. Um,
It Let's trim it down to like your top five. Like, if you
okay.
had top
Um,
five things, I'm a writer. This is what I need. And pens and paper are one thing, computers another thing. But there's got to be something outside the scope of the legitimate, pens and paper, and that you
yeah.
go, you know what? If I didn't have this, I probably couldn't sit down and write.
Um, yeah. And then you get into a definition of what's need, right? So, coffee would be high on my list,
Okay.
but if there was no coffee, I could probably still write. So it's a deep want, right?
But I mean, it's a deep want, but it's something that makes you want to sit down and write. So yes, I would
Yeah,
count the coffee.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, The internet, I I
Okay.
would find it difficult to do things without the internet, and of course, I find it difficult to do things with the internet because I'll be, you know, something entertaining will happen on Mastodon, and it'll suck an hour away while I'm having conversations with people, which is social, but it's also not writing. Uh, on the other hand, the ability to do research and to get deep thesauruses and things like that is pretty much essential. It's like, how does this actually work, and then how can I write it in a way that's clear? Yeah, so that's an essential tool. A roof over my head. Um, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I guess. Although
Um,
you probably, could write out of a cardboard box. What's her name? J.K. Rowling supposedly wrote it all in the back of her car. So I guess she had a roof over her head, but not
see, yeah.
necessarily was it, you know,
The caliber of the roof is less important than the fact of not
than
being
the
rained on.
actual roof. I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, a source of power would be way up there. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I need
okay.
electrons to do everything.
Okay.
And of essential importance, these
Headphones.
noise canceling headphones. Because
Wow.
my wife is also ADD, but
Okay.
she's the I can focus as long as there's enough distractions. So there will be, the TV will be on, a YouTube video will be going, she'll be singing to the dogs or something. Like there's just ambient noise, but it's all words. And my neurology is such that I can't not pay attention to words.
I listen to song lyrics, so I understand what you're talking about. So
Right,
I have to if I had music on in the background, it's got to be like a classical. It's got to be a
right,
jazz. Because the moment the guy starts singing,
right.
um, I'm like, what did he say?
Yeah,
And that happened to me this morning. I thought, okay, because I'm editing, I don't need fully
wrong.
attention. And I had Rush playing, and at some point I went, all right, stop. Okay, now I need silence, and yeah, I couldn't even do it through editing, and also through editing into the computer. Couldn't do it. I would thought I could get away with it, but
Really?
because while I'm editing, I'm also re-editing because I've
Right.
edited on paper, and then as
Yes.
you're putting it
Yep.
down, you go, well, what would be better? This would be better, right? Because now that you're
Yep.
putting it in
Yep.
officially, you're like, that sounds better.
Yep.
So, all right. So that's your top five list: the coffee, the headphones, a roof, the
Electricity.
internet, and then what was
Internet.
the fifth
Well,
one?
I think. Well, power. Yeah.
Power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So
I
you've
think I
got
got
like
to six.
general. So you've got okay. You got very more complex needs than I guess I
Okay.
have. So I basically went through, you know, how I start my day. And thinking of the things that I do when so here I'm in Italy. Um, I kind of do the same thing, but it's not always when I'm at home and you're in your own little bubble. It's probably easier to do than when you're on the road, and I have had to adapt. But number one, you need coffee, tea.
Right.
I am a tea drinker. There's a lot of great tea houses. There's one a nice, there's a really good one in Toronto called Genuine Teas. Shout out to them. Here in Italy, La Via del Te and Peter's House. I order tea. I order a lot of tea. I have shoe boxes full of tea. I change up my tea every day, believe it or not.
Okay. Yep.
But sometimes I get comfortable with a tea, and I get very creative with one of these teas, and it'll be the tea for that week. Because the weekend, sometimes I don't write. Sometimes I like to take that time off, and then the next week starts, and it's a different tea. And sometimes I get creative with that. So tea would be my number one thing, because it's the first thing I do. Boil the kettle when I get up in the morning. At home, again, I know this one's going to sound odd. Incense. I like to burn a couple
Yeah.
of sticks of incense sometimes, and that's usually because I'm I'm bored while the kettle is boiling. And I got into the habit of, I had a little box of incense that I would occasionally burn. And then I got bored waiting for the teapot because, my table's already set up, my writing implements there. I usually do that the night before because I know I'm going to write. So now I'm like, what do I do with this time that I have where the kettle is boiling? And a watched pot never boils, so
Hmm.
I have to do something else. And so I started lighting sticks of incense, so around the house. So that does it. You said power of the internet, darkness, morning.
Hmm.
I need to wake up in the morning and do it. If it gets past 8 or 9 in the morning, forget it. My writing's done. I cannot write. I don't know what it is. There's just no writing past 8 or 9 in the morning. It just doesn't happen. A thesaurus or a dictionary.
Right.
I need them because occasionally I will be like, I don't like that word. And you were talking about repetitive words.
Yes.
I I have been at that point where you get 2 or 3 of the same word, and I'm like, nope, 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 nope. It's got
Yeah.
to be something different.
Exactly.
And I don't know if this happens to you, but occasionally I get stuck looking at a word, and I'm like, that's not how to spell it,
Yeah.
right? And at that point, then I'll talk to the Amazon device. I don't want to say her name because she's right beside me. We've already heard she's already made an appearance today, but there are times that I'm like, how do you spell that word? And she'll tell me. And then the other one, sometimes if I have a concept in my head, I will say her name, and then I will say what is the Spanish Inquisition, or when was the Spanish Inquisition, or you know, what was the date of so and so's birthday, or
Right.
something, so that I can, if I'm centering something historically, I want to make sure that one of my stories is done in 2001, right? So I need to know that things were before or after 2001. um, you know, uh, when was what was the computer of 2001?
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
What did a cell phone look like in 2001? So yeah, the internet comes in there, but also the little helper. I occasionally ask her for some dates and stuff like that. And those are probably my five that I need: tea, thesaurus dictionary, the little crazy Amazon device, incense, and darkness or morning. So that's
Nice.
that's my five.
So I'm a little surprised that you don't pick a T for a book.
No, because you know what? Sometimes it takes you a couple months to write it, and you just don't have that much to use, right? So, but it
There's no
can't be a
lucky
week
T.
thing. Like this last week was Pumaitan. That was the tea I was using. Every
Hmm.
morning I would make a pot of Pumaitan, and that was it. It's a white tea. It's delicate. It was gentle. I guess I was just in a delicate, gentle mood.
Hmm.
So
When I
ask
make
me in
tea,
April when I
it's
start writing again, and I will tell you what tea I started with. So,
excellent. When I make
yeah.
tea, it's more like syrup. It's like
Uh, yeah,
double it
no,
up and drop it in and let it.
it's a 2 minute thing. I
No,
I have a
five
friend.
minutes.
Oh, two and a half.
Five.
Although on the other hand, I have a buddy that told me years ago, and I have a kettle that boils at different temperatures based on the tea,
Ah, very nice.
because each tea needs a different temperature, or
Ah,
black teas versus green teas versus white teas, all
interesting.
different temperatures to get the properly, or you burn the tea.
Right. Yep. Hmm.
So
Interesting. I presume
you burn the
black tea
leaves.
is up there somewhere.
Black tea is up. Green tea is kind of in the French press area,
Hmm.
and white tea is a much cooler temperature. I'll be honest, my white teas I probably boil a little too hot because I like hot tea.
Right.
For me, white tea is almost cool, like it's
Hmm.
um, almost cold. So really weird. So that's our list of things that I can't live without. Again, for those viewers, listeners, you know what? Tag
Yeah.
us on the things that you also can't live without as a writer, or just in life in general. I'm sure coffee will be the number one thing. And I leave you with this because we were talking about your programming past,
Yes.
and which gave me this week's hook. Programs that you use, recommend, or want to try.
Hmm.
I keep getting emails about things like that, and I thought, you know what? Why not we get a list of your 3 to 5 that you either use, recommend, or want to try.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Excellent. Well, it's been
Have a
fun
good week. Good luck on
as
that
always.
finishing. I know you're going to do it.
I wish I knew, but I'm going to make a sustained effort.
Perfect.
All right. Take care.